Good evening, everyone. I am Madhulika, a PhD scholar at CPOD SIS JNU. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you to the valedictory session of our conference titled, What Kind of Global Power Will India Be? Over the past 2 days, we have engaged with questions of governance, technology, economy, sustainability, soft power, and India's global vision. This closing session brings together reflections on India's place in the world as it prepares for 2047. We begin with a documentary which traces the journey of SIS over past 7 decades.
In 1955, a young nation sought to define its voice in world affairs. At Sapru House in Delhi, the Indian School of International Studies, today's School of International Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, was born. "70 years later, SIS stands as a beacon of scholarship, diplomacy, and intellectual leadership. SIS was conceived with a bold vision. India needed not just diplomats, but thinkers who could interpret world affairs through Indian eyes. The idea was to embrace a multidisciplinary structure and an intellectual commitment to understanding the complexities of the changing world. Visionaries like Hridaynath Kunzuru, A. Appadurai, and M.S. Rajan laid its foundations. Its journal, International Studies, launched in 1959, became India's first scholarly platform in the field, and its seminars brought global intellectuals to Delhi. The aim was clear: to produce knowledge rooted in Indian realities, not borrowed paradigms.
I came to Delhi, an 18-year-old boy, exactly 60 years back, and I entered the portals of Sapru House, where Indian School of International Studies was located. That is the parent institution which spawned the School of International Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University. And whatever I am, I owe it to the Indian School of International Studies and School of International Studies. Indian School of International Studies boasted of a student community which was truly international. Teachers were equally eminent. I remember Hans Marganto coming and teaching us his realist theory.
In 1970, ISIS merged with the newly founded Jawaharlal Nehru University. It was a turning point. Now called the School of International Studies, SIS expanded into teaching, offering master's and MPhil programs. Centers dedicated to the study of regions ranging from South Asia, East Asia, and West Asia to the Americas, Africa, the Soviet Union, and Europe flourished. Scholars like Urmila Fadnis, G.P. Deshpande, P.A.N. Murthy, R.P. Anand, Rahmatullah Khan, Bimal Prasad, and others gave SIS its intellectual breadth. This was also the time when JNU's inclusive entrance exams opened the doors for students from every corner of India, enriching the school's diversity and democratic spirit.
I followed my father, the late J.N. Dikshit's footsteps, who was among the first students at SIS when it was located at Sapru House. As we celebrate 70 years of the founding of the School of International Studies, we honor a legacy of critical thought, global engagement, and academic excellence. What made studying at SIS truly special for me was being part of an India rich in its diversity and vibrant in its spirit.
The 1990s brought profound changes. With the Cold War's end, globalization and India's liberalization, SIS reimagined itself. A new generation of scholars joined, bringing fresh ideas by introducing critical and post-colonial IR theory and engaging with debates on multilateralism, globalization, environment and security, while deepening SIS's core strengths in area of studies and international law. The launch of the MA in Economics World Economy bridged politics and economics for a globalizing India. Faculty played vital roles in shaping India's nuclear doctrine, WTO negotiations and track to diplomacy. SIS was not just observing history, it was part of it.
In SIS classrooms, we have always sought to blend cutting-edge theory and innovative concepts with empirical insights from the field and policy-relevant analysis. Now, this admixture of theory and policy manifested itself quite powerfully in the years preceding the Shakti nuclear tests of 1998.
In the 21st century, while rooted in its strengths in diplomacy, security studies and regional expertise, SIS has expanded into new frontiers. Environmental governance, technology, gender, peace and conflict resolution, geopolitics of climate change and regions like Indo-Pacific. SIS shaped the very grammar of an Indian imagination of world affairs. Drawing from the wisdom of the Arthashastra, guided by the quiet strength of ahimsa and dharma, and rooted in the enduring art of civilizational diplomacy. Alumni like Subramaniam Jaishankar, Nirmala Sitharaman, Amitav Acharya, Santishree Dhulipudi Pandit carry the school's influence into diplomacy, government and global academia.
I'm truly delighted to be back in JNU and very privileged to be invited to deliver the Professor Hridayanath Kundru Memorial Lecture. As you all know, he was the founder of the Indian Council of World Affairs, that is now closely associated with the Ministry of External Affairs, and where certainly students of my generation of JNU spent a lot of our time. He was also responsible for starting the Indian School of International Studies that became SIS in JNU, where I did my MPhil and PhD.
Memories are very fresh. JNU has its own imprint in our minds, and the way it evolves a person. So let me pay my tributes and respects to the institution from where I've really learnt a lot.
Not only as a Vice Chancellor at this very important time in the history of the school, which is one of its kind, not only in Asia, but in the world. I was also a student in the CPOD division from 1985 to 90. It was the school that groomed me to become the first woman Vice Chancellor of this very university, which I never thought I would. And this school is the topmost in Asia, as well as been getting JNU excellent ranks. And the levels, different centers and area studies is phenomenal, and the students that it's produced, as well as the faculty, are of tremendous international repute.
I think one of the most important jobs as an academic is to inculcate an ability to move beyond the narrow confines of our own surroundings and think and imagine things on global scale. SIS as an institution has given me that, and most importantly, it is a place that gives us people, the students from varied social backgrounds, a possibility of doing something and making a name for maybe ourselves.
I always wanted to be at a place where I can get academic exposure and learn IR from the best faculty, and SIS has given me exactly that platform. Here we learn not just from academic classes, but various workshops and seminars which have been organized.
For 70 years, SIS has indigenized the study of international relations. Long before global IR became a buzzword, its scholars questioned Eurocentric theories and built frameworks from Indian traditions. Its impact has been dual, nurturing policy-relevant scholarship while encouraging fearless intellectual inquiry. Students were taught not just to absorb knowledge, but to question it, to see dissent as dialogue and debate as discovery. That democratic spirit remains SIS's greatest strength.
Die School of International Studies der JNU ist weltweit für ihre kritischen Ansätze und Theorien bekannt, die in Europa, aber auch in Deutschland in den Studiengängen oftmals viel zu kurz kommen. Und das ist auch der Grund, warum ich mich für die JNU entschieden habe.
स्कुल अफ इन्टरनेसनल स्टडिज विगत 70 वर्षदेखि अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय राजनीति, कूटनीति, सुरक्षा अनुसन्धान, क्षेत्रीय अनुसन्धान लगायत विभिन्न क्षेत्रमा उच्च स्तरीय शिक्षा प्रदान गर्दै आएको एउटा स्कुल हो.
В факультете международных исследований мне посчастливилось познакомиться с очень интересными, глубоко знающими профессорами. Их подход уникальный, от моего понятия очень необычный.
私はインドから見た外交や国際情勢について学んでいます。この大学では日本をはじめ世界各国の教授や専門家から特別講義を受けることもできます。このような環境で勉強できることをとても嬉しく思っています。
70 years ago, SIS began as an experiment. Today, it is among world's foremost schools of international studies, standing at the crossroads of scholarship and policy, India and the world. SIS is more than its buildings, faculty or programs. It is an idea, born in the fires of independence, tempered through 7 decades of change and revival. It carries a quiet conviction that knowledge of the world is power, and that power which must be forged, questioned and carried forward, generation after generation, like a torch passed through time.
The School of International Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University is not just one of the oldest schools anywhere in Asia, but also the most prestigious. The School of International Studies was born in 1955, and we are celebrating its 70th anniversary this year. It was born of a visionary impulse that India needed not just practitioners on foreign policy, but also scholars who could craft a distinct Indian point of view. Today, as we celebrate the 70th anniversary, it's a time for reflection. It's a time to look back, but also a chance to look ahead. I believe that SIS, if it performs the role of a critical, plural institution with a sense of its own purpose, it can count in the next 70 years to be as relevant and to be as intellectually meaningful as the last 7.
As it steps into its 8th decade, SIS carries forward a promise to think independently, to speak fearlessly, and to contribute ideas for a more sustainable, humane, and just world. This is not just the story of an institution, but of India's journey to engage the world on its own terms. This is the story of SIS at 70.
Now I would request the panelists for this session to kindly join us on the stage. We are honored to be joined this evening by a very distinguished panel, Professor Santishree Dhulipudi Pandit, Vice Chancellor of JNU and Chair for this session. She is the first women Vice Chancellor of JNU, an alumna of SIS. She is a distinguished scholar and author and continues to be a source of pride for the university. We are very honored to have with us Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, the Chancellor of JNU and a distinguished career diplomat. He has served as India's Foreign Secretary and as India's ambassador to several countries. Welcome, sir. Professor Malini Parthasarathy is a political journalist with over 3 decades of experience and the founder of the Hindu Center for Politics and Public Policy to promote independent research and public dialogue. She is currently an honorary professor at SIS JNU. Welcome, ma'am. Shri J. Nanda Kumar is a prolific writer and poet. He is also the national convener for Pravaha, a nationwide intellectual movement rooted in Bharatiya ethos. Welcome, Shri Nanda Kumar. I request our Dean, Professor Mattu, to felicitate the panelists with flowers. Now we will have Saraswati Vandana presented by Ms. Madhuri and Ms. Ranjana.
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्कर प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा.
Thank you, Ms. Madhuri and Ms. Ranjana. I now request Professor Pandit to kindly take over the proceedings.
Good evening to all of you. Sabko mera namaskar. Ellarkum vanakkam. I would first request the speakers to begin so that I'll have the last word. It's easy to conclude. Then yesterday, I think at the inaugural, we set the ball rolling on to have alternatives for how would you look at India at 2047, Vikasit Bharat in 2047? And I would first request Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, our Honorable Chancellor, to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor. I'd like to congratulate you and the Dean of the School of International Studies, Amitabh Mattu, for organizing this first Aravali Summit on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the founding of the School of International Studies. We have the target of making India a developed nation by 2047. The theme of the summit, India and the World Order Preparing for 2047, is therefore most relevant. For preparing for 2047, India has to address many issues and challenges. The various sessions of the summit, as I've seen from the program, have covered them, be it reimagining the world order, the Indian imperative, our scientific imprint on the globe, the implications for the world of our economic ascent, India at the frontier of technology and innovation, India's global footprint in the areas of mobility, migration, and diaspora, India as a civilizational state shaping a new global consciousness, and climate justice and energy transition. The theme of this last valedictory session is, what kind of global power will India be? To begin, we have to be clear about what we mean by a global power. Obviously, it means a country that can exercise global influence based on its economic and military power. It means a country that can influence the direction and content of decisions on important issues facing the international community, either unilaterally or through groupings that it dominates. It means a country that controls or can materially influence can materially influence the working and the decisions of international political and financial institutions. It means a country that can, through its grip on international communication flows, can play a preponderant role in shaping global narratives. It means a power that is immune from punishment by others for any gross mistakes and excesses it commits. It means a power that can follow double standards in its international discourse and dealings. In short, a global power exerts a great and arbitrary weight in the functioning of the international system as it exists. By this broad-based definition, the US is on top of the global power pyramid. The former colonial powers are still classified as great powers, if not global powers, because France and the UK are permanent members of the Security Council. They are advanced industrial economies, are technologically innovative, are economically prosperous, still, despite mounting problems, and have strategic capabilities, including nuclear. They still exert influence, even if it has declined, in geographies they once ruled. As part of the G7, they are able to enhance their influence in the global system. China is now a global power in many ways. It is now the second largest economy and the biggest exporter. It is the biggest manufacturing power. Through the BRI, it has spread its presence and influence in all continents, acquiring concomitant political influence. It has assiduously built up dominance in many critical and emerging technologies. It is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and now the second largest contributor to the UN, which in turn has greatly enhanced its influence in the UN system. It is a nuclear power. It has shown its impressive military capabilities in the recent military parade in Beijing. Russia is a reduced global power as compared to what it was at the time of the Soviet Union. It too is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, possessive massive strategic military capabilities, is a dominant country in Eurasia, and has influence in other geographies and forums as a counter to the West's hegemony. Russia, as the biggest country in the world and controlling vast natural resources, will continue to have the attributes of a global power. Both China and Russia, despite their status as global powers, are not equals yet of the United States as a global power. Russia is being subjected to draconian sanctions in a bid to exclude it from the international system. It is also being subjected to a proxy war by the West, despite possessing huge strategic capabilities. China too is being subjected to sanctions in the shape of technology denials by the United States and Europe as well, in order to slow down its technological advances and limit its options. The theme of this valedictory session accepts that India is not yet a global power and posits the question that when it does become one, what kind of a global power it will be. Now, India is an ancient civilization. It has been a global power of sorts in civilizational terms. The spread of its civilizational influence in ancient times is visible in virtually the whole of Asia. That is China, Japan, Southeast Asia, and towards the west in Afghanistan, parts of Eurasia, and so on. India's connections with Greece and flourishing trade contact with Rome are historical facts. Indian civilization has not been tainted by colonialism, racism, human brutalities on so-called natives, genocide of indigenous people, slavery, wars in the name of religion, the will to dominate people afar, hegemonic ambitions, looting of wealth of others, empire building in distant lands, and so on. This is a precious legacy, entirely different from the legacies of the global or great powers of the West. Their legacies persist and express themselves in their determination to retain their hegemony in various ways, be it through military interventions, regime changes, sanctions, imposition of their supposedly superior values as a softer option, control of narratives through the media, think tanks, and NGOs. We have no such legacies that govern our outlook on the world, our national temperament, or our ethos. We accept and respect diversity. The philosophy of live and let live is ingrained in our thinking. The phrase Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the world is one family, is not an empty PR slogan for us. It is found in our ancient spiritual texts and represents the core value of seeing humanity and the planet as a single unified entity, and therefore it was quite appropriately reflected in our G20 presidency motto, One Earth, One Family, One Future. If one were to expatiate what this motto means, it encourages global solidarity, cooperation in variety of areas, including healthcare and environmental protection, inclusive growth, in short, a harmonious, interconnected world, and so on. Maybe the definition of a global power should be changed. The term is associated with power politics. The word power connotes authority, domination, ascendancy, supremacy. A global power, therefore, must have these attributes. Maybe a better term that eliminates the aggressive connotation inherent in this term should be countries with global standing or global impact. Anyway, this term is not going to change as it is based on the power hierarchies prevailing in the international system, where one talks of rising powers or middle powers or aspiring powers, etc. India is frequently referred to as a rising power. It is occasionally clubbed with middle powers. We are officially ourselves aspiring to be a leading power. I think we should look at ourselves as a country with singular attributes. The usual power-based definitions do not fit us adequately. We are, as I said, the oldest surviving civilization, as we have not disowned our past as some others have. We are now the most populous country in the world. We have the destiny of almost 1/5 of humanity in our hands. We are bound to grow economically. Our society will become more prosperous. We have strategic capabilities that will allow us to defend ourselves. We have the human talent which will enable us to develop our technology base. We genuinely want peace around us and internationally as well. We do not covet anybody's territory. We want to have a greater say in the international system and in global governance, not for the sake of power, but to shape it more equitably and inclusively. Our legitimate national interests are not protected in the current global order. We are subject to sanctions. There is interference in our internal affairs and in our neighborhood, aimed at undermining our interests and creating security threats for us. There are unacceptable claims on our territory and threats to our sovereignty. Our support for the Global South stems from the need to balance the interests of the developed and developing countries. Our neighborhood first policy is intended to stabilize our neighborhood through equitable cooperation, despite the challenges that we face. Our willingness to develop close ties with the United States and Europe, while also preserving our historic ties with Russia, are part of our cooperative worldview. This explains why we engage China, even though we see it as our greatest strategic threat. China has these global development, security, civilization, and governance initiatives, but these are within the framework of its ambitions to be at the center of international governance, equal to the United States or surpassing it by 2049. This is part of China's hierarchical view of power, which we don't share. India's attachment to strategic autonomy or multi-alignment reflects the basic philosophy of its international role, which is rooted in not taking sides, engaging with all, benefiting from cooperation with all countries, developing wide partnerships, avoid getting caught in the conflicts of others, and so on. We want to be useful to everyone and for others to view us as useful to their legitimate interests. Strategic autonomy or multi-alignment is thus an investment in international peace and cooperation and not confrontation between two countries or a group of countries. India, in any case, is too big a country to be an appendage of anyone. Do we see India as a pole in 2047? It all depends on how a pole is defined. Multipolarity can have three dimensions: political, economic, and security. Currently, the United States is a pole in all these three areas. As the biggest economy, the role of the US dollar as the prime reserve currency, its dominant role in the international political system, and the global reach of its armed forces with hundreds of military bases worldwide. China is an economic pole. With the size of its economy, its manufacturing heft, its control of some critical technologies and raw materials, its global economic presence through the BRI project. It is now developing into a political pole with many developing countries backing it on issues on which it is attacked by the West, especially on human rights issues. It has shown at the Human Rights Commission that it can gather support in its favor against the moves of the West. It has made political inroads into Eastern Europe and the Balkans too. It is not a security pole in any large sense. It lacks military bases and is constrained by the presence of US forces and alliances in the Western Pacific. Russia is a political, economic, and security pole largely confined to Eurasia, Central Asia, but where it also competes with China. Many countries in the global south are drawn towards Russia to hedge against Western hegemony, both bilaterally and within the ambit of BRICS and the SCO. India has no ambitions to be a pole that fosters divisions or hedging against one power on another. Its conception of a pole would be to foster cooperation, be a force for rebalancing the international system, introduce its own positive civilizational attributes and ideas into the functioning of the international system, and, as our foreign minister said yesterday, as a first-go country for assistance in our neighborhood in case of dire need, and so on. Now, these are some of my broad thoughts on the theme of today's session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Sibal. Now I request Dr. Malini Parthasarathy to make her presentation.
Can you hear me? Do you need louder? Okay. Esteemed Chancellor, Sri Kanwal Sibal, distinguished Vice Chancellor, Santishree Dhulipudi Pandit, distinguished Professor Amitabh Mathu, Dean of the School of International Studies, I want to first congratulate you on this excellent initiative to commemorate the school's 70th anniversary. And it's been very imaginatively commemorated by this annual flagship conference called the Aravalli Summit, which I think pays tribute to your being situated on the southern ridge of the Aravalli Range. And I think the theme is also most timely because we are at a flux in a particular international context. So I think this question that what kind of global power should we be is a very moot question and needs a lot of introspection. I think it's an interesting question, rich with promise, but loaded with several ifs and buts. And as pointed out by many here and in discussions elsewhere, India has become an economic powerhouse. We are a nuclear weapons state with formidable military capabilities, but we do have daunting external circumstances which militate against our rise as a major global power. For instance, we now exist in a very turbulent, volatile, and unpredictable international environment. But as everyone's been saying, our rise seems unstoppable. And I think yesterday, External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, put it very well by saying very vividly, saying that it appears that it's India's destiny, that its rise takes place in an exceptionally turbulent period. So I think that's the actual crux of the challenge that we are facing. India has had a harrowing last few months, starting with a lethal terrorist strike in Pahalgam by Pakistan, sponsored terrorists last May. After we successfully beat back the consequent attacks in Pakistan Operation Sindoor, we unfortunately received only a very half-hearted response from the global community. And much so I think we had overestimated the likelihood of global powers coming to our rescue, and that didn't really happen. So then I think much more unexpectedly came the mercurial swings from President Donald Trump of the United States. He was very piqued, and I would say the fact that he took a lot of credit for he tried to take credit for the conflict resolution of India and Pakistan, and we flatly said that there was no third-party mediation. I think that caused a lot of blowback from Trump's United States. So I think there's growingly, and there was at that period even now, a sense that India is being ringed in, hemmed in by inimical forces. That reminds us that we should not let our guard down, given the perils that we face as a nation state. The rise of an aggressive American protectionism even as the yet unresolved conflicts with Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, cast, I think, a long shadow in international relations, cloud the prospect for the free development of countries seeking their own growth and prosperity. But it is true that as the global horizon darkens, India remains a glowing light, much optimism about its economic growth, positioning it as the fifth largest economy in the world, with the IMF projecting India's GDP to increase to USD 5.5 trillion by 2028. Then now we are the fourth, but we're projected to be the third very soon. We are the fastest growing economy. The growth rate averages annually at above 6%, and there's no question that our economic momentum is gathering pace. We are the world's most populous nation, with the silver lining that we are now in the face of a demographic dividend. We have a significant rise of a young workforce, boosting economic potential. We have a rising middle class, expected to comprise 46% of the population by 2030, which certainly boosts domestic demand and accelerates consumption. So the obvious corollary of our rising economic prosperity is the expectation amongst millions of Indians that India would be recognized as a leading global power and a force to be reckoned with in global geopolitical dynamics. But the painful reality is that as much as we aspire to be seen as a global player of influence, we do not have the strategic clout or political weight that the major powers, the US, Russia, or China, have, that can compel the world community to take our views into consideration on major issues. Therefore, the question to be asked, are our ambitions to be a leading global power in 2047 unrealistic? The world is watching, as we are now positioned as the world's fourth largest economy, fastest major economy. So it's a logical step to taking our place. But we must ask ourselves hard questions. Do we really have what it takes to become a global power to reckon with? A global power, according to all the textbook definitions, refers to a sovereign state which has the capability to exert significant influence, project power, and shape events on a world scale. As of now, as we said earlier, the power can be ascribed only to the US, Russia, and China. It is also known that such power is derived not just from economic strength, but formidable military capabilities, political and diplomatic leverage in international organizations, and of course, cultural and technological influence worldwide. As for India, we are clearly not in that space yet. We have seen in recent circumstances that our rise has not yielded the requisite strength or authority that would stand us in good stead in the global field. The hostile moves that have taken place against India, including the restrictions of H-1B visas, preventing the entry of skilled Indians into the US, the tariffs on Indian products, and the provocative hyphenation of India and Pakistan in a strategic equation by US President Donald Trump have been deeply unsettling circumstances. So what do we really have going in our favor at this juncture? I think, as we've been saying again, everyone, our advance is incontestable because of the accelerated economic reforms, sustained infrastructure building, and above all, the remarkable digital transformation which has lifted our economy to a higher state. India has transformed from an agrarian economy to a services-driven one, with the service sector now accounting for over 55% of value, consisting of software exports and IT. Digital infrastructure, such as the UPI, United Payments Interface, has transformed India's financial system, providing an alternative to established global financial structure. Thanks to the UPI and the digitalization of payments via mobile devices, the ordinary citizen feels empowered, invested, and is an active player in the national economy. So I think the Modi government is aware of this, and they know that the vision of Viksit Bharat, in which India is supposed to become a developed country on par with others, has formidable ifs and buts standing in the way. It is to this end that these ambitious flagship initiatives have been launched, such as Make in India, meant to accelerate or rev the gear up on manufacturing and industry, And Atmanirbhar Bharat meant to emphasize self-reliance in all economic sectors, identifying sectors such as infrastructure, technology-driven systems, India's democratic dividend, consumption and demand and consumption. So as India comes under pressure from the US and the tariffs slapped on Indian products, the imperative self-reliance can never be more stressed. It's now a practical necessity, and now there's a compulsion to increase demand and consumption. So what are the other ingredients for transformation or emergence or movement towards global leadership? Self-belief, according to me, is an important prerequisite for national transformation. What will really power our march forward? What will invest millions of Indians in the dream of becoming a leading power by 2047? Self-belief is the first requirement. Citizens need to hold a strong positive belief in our collective destiny of greatness and a prosperous future. Fortunately, Indians are highly motivated and invested in the dream of national transformation. We have, as a nation, always had a strong sense of self-belief in our country's inherent potential, and that certainly matters. I think pre-independence and independence, the campaign that we all launched, certainly helped to give India dreams and visions of greatness, and I think the early 2 decades of independence did lay the foundations for a sense of self-esteem, prestige and dignity. Indians have also always taken pride in the antiquity of our civilization, recognizing that we have a rich, pluralist heritage. And more importantly, we understand that there has been a continuum of existence from ancient times. We are aware that there's a thread of connectedness running through time from the Indus Valley civilization, the Vedic period, and in the south, the various dynasties that have flourished south of India. India's genius of adaptation and assimilation, absorbing incoming cultural influences with waves of invasion, have seen the adoption of Islam and Christianity as part of our multicultural legacy. Therefore, I would say that in the imagination of Indians, there has been a collective cultural recognition that India exists from north to south. The sense of continuing civilization, despite the contested and differing historical narratives, have certainly made India aware that when independence in 1947 might have made us a sovereign independent state, the nation that was called India existed for centuries. And the second factor in our favor is, as everyone has said, India's soft power. It's been a trump card of sorts. It's had a global reach for centuries, its philosophical depth, cultural concepts like Dharma, ideas like yoga, and ideas like, and even Upanishads and the Vedas, translated very early on by the Orientalists in the 18th century, have found worldwide resonance, particularly in East and Southeast Asia, establishing India automatically as a nation with widespread cultural influence beyond its borders. And I think India's belief in its own destiny is not newfound. It found echoes in the Constituent Assembly in the early decades of foreign policy led by Jawaharlal Nehru, whose contribution to building our prestige and sovereignty must be acknowledged in the articulation of the principle of non-alignment. Today, non-alignment is a doctrine much derided, but at that time, I think it served its purpose of ensuring India did not become a client state of either superpower, and instead increased its own influence by leading a group of like-minded nations like Indonesia and Egypt, and at that point Yugoslavia. So such global arrangements have laid the foundation for India to pursue its own development and national security goals, receiving economic assistance from both superpowers and being able to invest heavily in its own economic capability. Today, as we face inimical external circumstances, both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and External Affairs S. Jaishankar have shown exemplary courage under fire. They've not lost their nerves under pressure, and they have managed to deftly pull India out of the isolation that it could have sunk into. The Jaishankar-Modi doctrine, as it's now being called, unveils a new policy approach of multi-alignment and strategic autonomy, which he referred to yesterday, which will be a most effective tool to navigate a multipolar world. This approach also places national interest and national capacity building along with national values as key drivers of India's approach to the world. In my view, this is a more honest and practical way of engaging with the world, emphasizing that India has a right to articulate its own views at global forums, pursues several partnerships with countries that further its own national interests, has given India new confidence and authority on the world stage. The ability to stand up to the escalating pressure from the United States, which was aimed at isolating India geopolitically, and the refusal to back down from buying oil from Russia, has won a lot of respect from several countries, including leading European powers like France, Italy, and the UK. The European Union remains undaunted by President Trump's urging to impose similar punitive tariffs on India, emphasizing instead an eagerness to engage in economic cooperation with India. Then the other thing that I think that helps us, taking interest in important global forums. Alongside the Modi-Jaishankar priority on strategic autonomy, is the determination to have India position itself as a leader of important regional groupings like BRICS and being a strong advocate for the global south. There's been a lot of interest recently in building ties with Africa, and the Prime Minister recently went to countries in the African continent not been visited by previous Prime Ministers. So the role that India is playing in BRICS is also focused on disentangling poor economies from the dollar-dominated global economy. By asking for reforms in the global financial architecture and suggesting that local currencies be in play in trade between these countries, India indicates its commitment to pushing for a more level playing field in international relations. And another thing we are doing, which is right, voicing our opinion on contentious global issues. India is also displaying a new assertiveness, refusing to be sidelined by attempts to marginalize us in the global arena. New Delhi has shown itself as willing to mediate between Ukraine and Russia, has also hastened to support peace efforts such as in the Middle East. India has been clear that its voice will not be confined to the South Asian region, but it will speak up of global issues of concern. All these points have certainly situated India favorably for ascendancy for global, as a global power of consequence in the decades ahead. An economy powering ahead, investments in military capabilities, increasing its diplomatic reach to global south, and positioning ourselves as a consensus builder is bound to increase India's standing in the world. What are the speed bumps? They are formidable hurdles standing in the way. Several elephants in the room, if I may be said, that need to be addressed if we are to proceed smoothly on a path to Viksit Bharat by 2047. There is the unfortunate reality that India is seen more as a regional hegemon than as a friendly partner. India has traditionally thought of itself as a regional superpower and has automatically presumed since independence that it is the dominant player in South Asia. This last decade, our influence has visibly waned in the region. Much as we may not want to believe, we are seen today much more as a hegemon, a regional hegemon, than a benevolent first among equals in the region. Our leadership in South Asia had earlier been strengthened by circumstances such as the birth of Bangladesh in 1971, which gave us an aura of invincibility as a leading regional power. And the formation of SAARC, India's own taking leadership of that extremely good initiative, had earned goodwill with our neighbors, as it was seen as providing a platform for institutionalized economic cooperation in the region. And as many of us know, the South Asian neighbors feel that India doesn't give enough emphasis to the concept of South Asia, and it instead prefers to talk about itself. So I think SAARC was a very good vehicle at that point to show a commitment to South Asia, which unfortunately is now on the decline. The highly visible efforts at reconciliation in Pakistan through the 80s and the 90s unfortunately might not have paid off, but it won India considerable respect, and New Delhi was seen as eager to overcome differences and lead a united region towards prosperity. The dynamics in South Asia have sharply changed as known, with a complete rupture of relations with Pakistan, which refuses to abandon its support for cross-border terrorism, and with Bangladesh having turned hostile. We are now certainly mending fences with Maldives, and we continue to do our best to keep good relations with Nepal and Sri Lanka. It is also evident that the neighborhood first policy initiated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2014 has not had much headway because the shifts in the region, notably regime changes in Sri Lanka, Maldives and Nepal, with Pakistan anyway being out of the ambit because of its continuing hostilities. It is also a strategic reality that China has become an active player in the region, with our neighbors increasingly shifting strategic loyalty to Beijing. We have a lot to offer our neighbors in terms of economic cooperation. We have to urgently outline a vision of shared prosperity for South Asia in which all members partake and benefit. To overcome the trust deficit that we have with our smaller neighbors, it's imperative that we step up partnerships with these countries in terms of investment and economic assistance. It is therefore welcome that the Modi government is investing in healthier ties with Sri Lanka and Maldives, remaining on stable course in Nepal, proceeding cautiously in Bangladesh. What are the other stumbling blocks that stand in our way of our path to greatness? Formidable and persistent challenges such as continuing economic disparities and sharp inequality, continuing poverty that exists amidst the accelerated growth. It needs urgent resolution to better, more efficient state intervention so that growth becomes meaningful to all Indians. And we must recognize that the world will not take us seriously. Whatever GDP increase, whatever economic growth you have, if the feeling is that there are sharp economic disparities, it means there's no collective participation in the building of a national productive engine. This will certainly take away from the belief in our rights. Pervasive corruption and weakened institutions continue to hinder the distribution of the benefits of growth. Preventing the percolation of growth to the underprivileged will disinvest millions in the target of achieving high growth. So to conclude, as to what kind of global power will India be depends on the success we have in surmounting these formidable challenges and how effectively do we play to our strength. We have much going for us. A set of national values, including a strong sense of global responsibility, a commitment to pluralism, democracy and shared well-being. These are intangible assets that are part of India's proud legacy. The new effort to be assertive in global forums and to voice our opinion on global concerns, including playing peacemaker in conflicts like Russia and Ukraine, have enhanced India's moral stature. Above all, India has a unique perspective and stands apart on the world stage. Its storied civilizational legacy, its successful struggle against colonialism, and emergence as a leading power has won respect the world over, which continues to this day. But it is in our national interest to honestly acknowledge the elephant in the room, the failure to curb corruption, eradicate poverty, while we sustain a high rate of growth, and proceed forward with a determination to address these issues before expecting the world to believe in our rights, the confident and self-assured global power. It is crucial to involve millions of Indians in this dream and have them invest their energy in the project to build a Viksit Bharat by 2047. When such a vision manifests as reality, we would have indeed realized our true sovereignty and independence 100 years after our nation state was born. As I conclude, I want to felicitate Vice Chancellor Srimati Santishree Pandit and Dean Amitabh Bhattu for convening this very timely discussion and giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Dr. Malini Parthasarathy. Now I request Shri J. Nanda Kumar ji to make his presentation.
Esteemed Chancellor, Ambassador Sri Kanwal Sibal, respected Vice Chancellor Professor Sri Dhulipudi Pandit ji, distinguished Dr. Malini Parthasarathy ji, respected Professor Amitabh Bhattu, Dean of the School of International Studies, and all the dignitaries who are here, and my dear students and faculty. The topic, as we are all quite aware about, which we are going to discuss or we are discussing in this valedictory session,
is what kind of global power Bharat will be. Recently, a great deal of discussion has taken place on various aspects of this topic in the context of the US tariff controversy. At that time, several intellectuals, scholars, including Westerners, appreciated Bharat's unrelenting stance, noting that Bharat is not a pushover, but a civilizational force. We are glad that such an awareness is being increasingly acknowledged across global forums. Yes, Bharat never aspires to become a global hegemon or a policeman, but a dharmic and moral force, just as a Nigraha Shakti, to create a situation in which the world nations live in amity and peace. We have a distinct vision and voice. This is exactly what our beloved External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said. We are not on anybody's side doesn't mean that we are sitting on the fence. We are standing in our ground. I have had an opportunity to learn two particular lines, Sanskrit lines, from my childhood onwards. That is, Ajayancha Vishwasya Dehi Shashakti, Sushilan Jagadyena Namram Bhavat, in the Sangha Shakha, from the Prarthana. I think these two lines very much explains what a power we would be, what should be. We need Shakti, we need power, we need strength, but it is not to defeat anyone, but it is actually is to attain invincible strength, both physical and material, no doubt, but not to harm or dominate, but to win the world through noble qualities or civilizational powers. The people across the world looked at us, the Guru, hence the Vishwa Guru. When an Bharatiya ambassador called on Mao Zedong, he said there is a belief in his country that if we do good deeds, we would be born in Bharat on the next life. So, Bharat used to be an aspirational land not only for knowledge seekers, but wealth seekers. No other country in the history of mankind has seen so much onslaught as Bharat did. Alexander to Mughals to Europeans came here seeking wealth. There is no continent in the world where we didn't reach in the past. But our motto was never to conquer those places or countries, but to ennoble them through our love and affection. Hence our slogan or mantra has ever been Krinvanto Vishwamaryam, means ennoble the world for what? To make it a better place to live. Even now in countries like Indonesia, Japan, etc., we are adored. It's a fact. Discussing about a book, British writer William Dalrymple recently said, I'm quoting, most of the great ideas the world discusses today have been originated in Bharat. But this is not taught in any university of repute in the world, unquote. The timeless ideals of coexistence, already Ambassador Sibal has already mentioned about Vasudhaiva Kutumpakam. And also in our ancient scriptures, it has been clearly mentioned that this Bhumi is our Mata. Mata Bhumi Putroham Prithivya. These noble thoughts have their origin in Bharat. If there exists a truly universal vision that embraces all living beings with compassion and kinship, it is the Bharatiya worldview. When Swami Vivekananda addressed the audience in the Conference of World Religions in Chicago as brothers and sisters of America, he was only echoing the Bharatiya tradition of treating all people as kith and kin. This is not something that is accidental. According to Vedanta, the whole prapancha, or the universe is the manifestation of divinity in different forms. Hence, Chandogya Upanishad says, Ekoham Bahusyamaha, that those who are born and brought up in the Bharatiya tradition cannot but treat not only human beings, but even other animate and inanimate objects in the universe, the manifestation of God. Having said this, we have to discuss a bit about the main topic also. I think I will not exceed the limit which has been given, time limit which has been given to me by Honorable Professor Matuji or our Honorable Chair. Today, we have to discuss about the global political order also. We are hearing so much of discussion about a global order. There exists an unbelievable volume of literature that points towards the concept of a global political order. I'm repeating, a global political order. Let us contemplate the possible histories of such an order. Did such a global order ever truly exist? In fact, the world, at any given moment in human history, and especially in the last 2 centuries, appears extremely chaotic, full of conflict and unhappiness. Therefore, it seems that the debate on the global world order is some kind of aspirational dream, a normative idea. Unfortunately, these normative ideals are not confined merely to abstract statements. They are embedded in legal and diplomatic principles across the world. Thus, we must ask, in the world order being discussed, whose world is it? And for whom does it exist? The so-called global order is not a uniform consensus, nor a genuine reflection among all the diverse groups of this world. Rather, it is a kind of normative vision, shaped by the perspective of a particular culture, that is Western culture, about what constitutes a global order in its imagination. In building such a global order, especially over the past few centuries, there has been violent disruptions. The boundaries of the world have been redrawn, sometimes carelessly. People penned maps in drawing rooms, seeking to settle the lives of real people merely by shifting lines on paper. Such practices merit reflection. What kind of aspiration can this global order generate in an ordinary person walking on the streets of Bharat or on those of Papua New Guinea? It remains unclear whose purposes this ostensible global order truly serves. In recent years, from onset of the COVID-19 pandemic onwards, we have witnessed tremendous failures of these institutions and the normative ideas of the Western world, which have long sought to dictate terms to all other nations. For 2 centuries, they have declared what kind of administration is suitable for us, without consulting the governed. We have been compelled to become nation states. The nature of our institutions had been decided by others. The arrogance of such politics remains dominant in the world even as it visibly crumbles. These powers have insisted that sovereignty must prevail everywhere and have waged wars whenever and wherever they saw fit, bombing the world while endlessly proclaiming the sanctity of sovereignty as an ideal in international relations. The last 100 years of politics indicates that these ideals in the real world order make little sense. So, what should be the way forward? How do we reimagine our modes of existence? Anyone pursuing such questions must begin with where we stand today. We have been told that human beings must desire freedom. We have been told that liberty, fraternity, and equality are the cardinal principles that would underpin our political life. Consequently, democracy and human rights are promoted as the governing principles of modern nation states. Because this assumption is taken seriously, powerful actors can invest money in the name of aid. for example, US aid, to build democracy globally. It's an irony. While such causes may appear noble in principle, in reality, interventions for strengthening democracy, they are intervening only to strengthen the democracy, often mean that governments are toppled, countries are broken, and civil wars are encouraged. Today, every tiny instance in, there is another fact also. Every tiny instance in Bharat is scrutinized as a gross violation of human rights. Meanwhile, what happens to Hindus, Sikhs, or other pagan in various Islamic countries is rarely a concern for human rights advocates. We have to address all these issues. These are the views from a layman. I know Samanyata laymen seldom dare to enter into these academic discourses, but I dare to. We have been preached and lectured all the time that just institutions have just consequences. If that were to be the case, all the global institutions were just institutions, what are its consequences? We know today that these are merely a set of assumptions what do not have any serious significance. But then we are asked to build such institutions despite having unjust consequences. We have seen that in GATT, WTO, or any other global commitments. Name it. Therefore, it is now crucial to revisit the value and significance of these ideas for our existence in the 21st century. This is fundamentally a question about the future of the present. The time has come for a profound reassessment of our basic assumptions in international relations and geopolitics. Time has come to articulate how would global order look like if we have to draw from Bharatiya thinking. One should ask, how might international relations look if their foundations were based on Bharatiya ethos? What should be? This demands deeper arrangement, engagement, and reflection upon our own intellectual traditions. Let us briefly return to history to sketch up such potential alternatives. We have the Kautilya Arthashastra and a range of epigraphic material that illustrate Bharatiya perspectives on politics. Of course, Bharat had many rajas. It was not a nation state in the modern sense, but rather a civilization state. Multiple rajas yet connected as one culture or civilization. We were not driven by passport and territorial boundaries, but by mutual trust and cooperation. A careful reading of Kautilya Arthashastra reveals many debatable points. Most importantly, it was not based on any normative ideal. For Kautilya politics must possess a goal and work pragmatically by solving problems that are confronted then and there. It offered pragmatic solutions to problems of human existence. Its vision for politics was not centered merely on liberty, fraternity, or equality. While Kautilya did not ignore these entirely, the central goal of politics was to ensure that different kinds of people who lived on earth could pursue happiness, the quest for Ananda. Thus, Bharatiya political reflection revolved around ensuring that people, in whatever condition they lived, could engage in the pursuit of happiness. The state's role was to create the necessary conditions for such aspiration without disturbing the happiness of ordinary people. The prescriptions for what a Raja should do or how he should interact with other rulers all centered upon this ideal of Ananda. Can we imagine the future world order which is set with a goal of ensuring happiness to people? Can the international relationship and geopolitics be driven by the goal of happiness, Ananda? What kind of institutions are fundamental to ensure such an imagination of international relationship? Warrants urgent answers. Bharatiya thought did not obsess over sovereignty, which is Western concept. Today, the modern nation state's monopoly over violence can result in violence against its own citizens. International relations speak of treaties and diplomacy centered on sovereignty. But in practice, powerful states disregard these principles, evidenced by the brutal violence of Western powers against non-Western populations over the last 2 centuries. Let me complete. I am skipping some of the points which are not that a bit explanatory, so I am skipping that. Why then must the world persist in the idea of the nation state? That's a question. Why should we persist on the idea of nation state? Why is there only one model of governance imposed everywhere? The diversity of Bharatiya polity in history, multiple Rajas managing complex relationships yet being part of a single Bharatavarsha and dealing with foreign powers shows the merit of diverse mechanisms. Today, we have been talking about integrating globally economic markets. Can we reconstruct the engagement of Bharat, a major contributor for the global GDP, in the absence of today's economic institutions and in the absence of capitalism, communism, and socialism? How could our ancestors do such a global integration? What are those ideals from which we can learn not because they are Bharatiya, but because there were the most peaceful and happy ways of being in this world from which world should get benefits from? How can we imagine an international relation which is more happiness oriented and non-normative problem solving? Can we make engage today with these deeper questions? I am not making a case simply because it is Bharatiya and ancient, but it was a model that functioned successfully for millennia. This was not a political or economic model, but a way of being in the world from which economics and politics emerge. We did not ask people to change their life because we had a political or economic model. Rather, we could create models of politics and economics to facilitate the life of people. This is exactly what Jayaprakash Narayan long ago pointed by saying today there is something peculiar is happening in Bharat, where Rajaniti is not coming from Lokaniti, but Rajaniti is dictating how Lokaniti should be. This is also the exact crisis of international relations today. I am concluding. Politics and international relations should be matters of practical engagement, not unrealizable normative ideals. What is the nature of future practical engagement? What resources can we draw from Bharatiya tradition? These conceptual resources, dharma, nyaya, papa, punya, ananda, sukha, dukkha, and rina, can help us reimagine the world's future. These key concepts offer completely alternative possibilities for reimagining a global order that is more fundamentally problem-solving and practical. It is time, therefore, to revisit and draw upon these principles, engaging with our traditions to address the real problem of global order with innovative, ethical, and genuinely plural approaches. Namaskar, Vande Mataram.
Thank you, Nanda Kumar ji. Good evening to all of you. I think all of you are so tired, so I will be short and sweet. Brevity is the soul of wit. Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, respected Dr. Malini Parthasarathy, respected Nanda Kumar ji, Amitabh Mattu, faculty, colleagues, students, and all of you. I think the issues raised throughout the two-day conference is what we have really brought in the first idea that we are indeed a very diverse, plural civilization. Diversity adds color even to our ideas. The issues raised was, first, is India really a global power? Or we are just going towards it? We are an emerging power, and we have some way to go towards it. My first question for global power is, do we have the political will to power? Till now, we have proved that we are a major power with the mindset of a small power. We are not very confident, but now that is changing. But will that bring in? See, political power has to always be nurtured by narrative power. Narrative power is something that SIS and Indian academicians should do. And that is what Nanda Kumar ji or even Ambassador said, the narrative architecture. How are we going to bring it? From what traditions are we going to bring it? And how are we going to bridge tradition with modernity? And even realm with region. So how are you going to change with continuity? So this is a major challenge to young minds as well as the scholars in SIS. And I think as we started 70 years ago, I'm sure we have another clarion call to renew ourselves. The second issue that came in was, are we really a pivot? Are we a geopolitical pivot, geo-economic pivot, geocultural pivot, or geostrategic pivot? So how are we going to get into these, narratives? And even if we have to dismantle a narrative, we need a narrative architecture that needs to be built. And I think we are still at the beginning. We need a very, very long way. And Malini Parthasarathy talked about a volatile, unpredictable world. I think there I have, like Jaishankar, a lot of hope. Because a dharmic civilization doesn't like order. It likes disorder and chaos. And we have creativity out of it. And that is what our ancient sages said. So I think we are thriving quite well. So, but the question is, as you rightly said, do we have the self-belief? But soft power has to be mixed with hard power to become a smart power. So I think soft power is not enough. So this is something that we will have to move. And the other thing I want to bring in is the question that came in, are we a civilization state or a nation state? I think there have been certain American writers who wrote that China and India are civilization states, and the concept of a nation state restricts the way you understand them. And I would also say with the present President of the United States of America, I've come to know America has proved beyond doubt that is one of the best in Orwellian doublespeak. That is, they say they're for democracy, human rights, and secularism, and they do just the opposite. They are for terrorism, they are for fanatical governments, supporting Islamic fundamentalism. They are the ones who dismantled all the modern governments that were there in West Asia. So I think they should talk less and do, and I'm happy that both our External Affairs Minister and our Prime Minister are especially showing the mirror to Europe and to the United States. And finally, I would only say that if we want a Bharatiya narrative like the Chinese have bought in their own narrative, we need to work hard on it. We need to have more debates, discussions, criticisms, but at the same time, try to build an architecture that is inclusive and innovative. Thank you all. Let me thank the entire school and the faculty who have worked so hard to make this wonderful conference at SIS at 70. Maybe we won't be there at 75. You will people carry it on. And I thank Amitabh Mattu, his team, the students, the volunteers. Thank you so much. Both as SIS alumnus, I'm so happy that you made me a part of it. Though you have given me credit as a Vice Chancellor, I don't deserve it. But I think you deserve more than me, though I like that I'm also a part of it. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy, Amitabh, we have an equal Nari Shakti on the valedictory session. And so you did that as well. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Professor Pandit, for leading this insightful discussion. And thank you all our panelists for sharing their perspectives. I now invite Professor Priti Singh, Conference Co-convenor of Aravali Summit, for a formal vote of thanks.
A very good evening to all of you. I know you're very tired, but Chancellor, Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, Vice Chancellor, Professor Santishree Dhulipudi Pandit, Dr. Malini Parthasarathy, Shri J. Nanda Kumar ji, Professor Amitabh Mattu, all our distinguished speakers of the conference, invited delegates and students. Well, we have reached the end of 2 days of stimulating deliberations and discussions on India and the world order and our preparedness for 2047. This is not the end. It is a continuation of our celebrations of being a part of SIS, of being the start of the first in a series of Aravali summits and taking these discussions further. Let me begin by thanking our speakers for the valedictory session. I thank our Chancellor, Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, for his reflections on India's future, his insights. We appreciate his positivity towards all our requests. He consented without any hesitation to speak at this session and has been with us, including for many of our previous discussions, seminars, conferences. So thank you, sir. Our Vice Chancellor, Professor Santishree Dhulipudi Pandit, without whom, frankly, we would not be having this conference here at JNU. She made it possible with her time, her energy, and her encouragement, and of course, she's raised very pertinent questions right here, right now. I warmly thank Dr. Malini Parthasarathy for not just her thought-provoking comments, but also her kindness in agreeing to enrich us with her observations. Shri Nanda Kumar ji, thank you really very much for consenting to be here today and also for your very erudite remarks. And I'm sure this session is going to result in deeper contemplation about our future and inspire our students to think, to reason, and then to act. Our Dean, Professor Amitabh Mattu, has been incredible. He is very active, as all of us know, with a fountain of ideas, reaching out, involving everyone, and giving shape to his ideas has been a labor of love for the entire school, the faculty, the students, the staff, and indeed also the university. We have to put on record also our gratitude to the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, for delivering a very pertinent and pointed inaugural address, and to the Ministry of External Affairs that has helped us fund and organize this event, especially the Joint Secretary. Initially, it was Sri S. Raghuram, but also Ms. Aparna Ray and her entire team of Policy Planning and Research Division. They've really been absolutely wonderful. Our institutional partners, the Chintan Research Foundation, the President, Mr. Shishir Priyadarshi, and his team, who have been with us every step of the way. Our international guests, who've indeed really traveled from far, from Chile, from Suriname. I can see Professor Moritz Hassan Khan still sitting here with us. From the United States, Professor Lomash, from Nigeria, and from South Korea. Thank you not just for agreeing to speak here, but also for your immense patience with us and for your understanding. Our national speakers, our chairs of the sessions, and our former professors, without whom really our celebration would not be complete. Our rectors, deans, and in fact the entire administration, all our faculty and students, thank you all for being with us for these 2 days of the discussions. And my personal gratitude to a volley of faculty organizers, co-convenor Professor Meeta Mehra, the entire team who took care of the minutest details, along with our team of student volunteers who have been really amazing. So thank you all. Should we now proceed maybe for dinner?
द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलति तरंगा तब शुभ नामे गाहे
यमुना तव जय शिषमा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत
मंगलदायक जय हे
भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय जय जय